Vice article from 2017 about the DC Madam I found earlier, and I thought this was interesting. They tried to bring the info out later after she had died already. Yeah, and her attorney said the records could impact the presidential election.
What?
The Supreme Court denied the applications. And
Wait a minute.
They tried to FOIA the FBI.
So recently, Tim Dillon made an appearance on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they got into a conversation about Jeffrey Epstein and all the powerful people connected to him. Now, I gotta say, this was one of the most frustrating and unbearable things I've watched in a long time. I'll explain exactly why in a minute, but let's start with where the conversation began, which was Bill Clinton and his ties to Epstein. This part also made me want to bang my head against the wall, but I'll let you guys watch it first and then we'll comment on it.
There's definitely, and it's been exposed, I think, by the Epstein thing, there's an entire ecosystem of depravity amongst the ruling elites that people go to great lengths to cover up. This is obvious. So,
and it always has.
And always has forever and ever and ever. And it would be absolutely plausible to me that people have died to cover this stuff up, as Jean-Luc Brunel, Jeffrey Epstein, many others.
Yeah.
Maybe Virginia Giuffre, I don't know. But like, there's tons of questionable deaths linked to the Epstein thing. And by the way, linked to things like the Franklin scandal that happened many years ago. All of the Gary Caradori was an investigator who supposedly had proof of politicians beating children. Plane goes down with his kid.
Whitewater.
Yeah. Suspicious deaths.
Vince Foster.
Very suspicious death.
I read that book, The Strange Death of Vince Foster.
Very odd.
In the 90s or whenever it was that I got a copy of that.
Well,
I was
the
like,
Clintons,
this is bananas.
He was the governor of Arkansas when they were running drugs out of Mena, Arkansas to fund the Contras.
Barry Seals.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton was the governor of that state. Bill Clinton reads a book called, it's a famous book by Carol Quigley, I believe called Tragedy and Hope, and it's a history of the 20th century or something. It's this compendium. It's Bill Clinton's favorite author. He reads this book and he's, attends the, Bohemian Grove. He's selected by very wealthy, powerful people to then become a party elder and a leader. And many people believe, myself, is that in order to be selected by that group of people to run for the highest office in the land, they have something on you.
Yeah.
You're to some degree compromised. You've shown willingness to play the game. You've looked the other way, at the very least. Maybe you've engaged, but at the very least, if somebody goes, something's going on in Mena, Arkansas, you go, don't have time for it. And you've shown the willingness to play the game.
Yes.
And so he's the governor of a very small state that isn't, Arkansas is a beautiful state and there's whatever. But he's not, he's not like running a huge state. He's not, a well-known politician. He's a very charismatic, very great speaker, great politician, but from a very small state. He's then elevated very quickly to the standard bearer of the Democratic Party after tons of allegations about inappropriate behavior with women, credible allegations of rape from Juanita Broderick, being the governor during that whole Mena, Arkansas thing. It's well known that there's skeletons in the closet.
It's a good guy that's going to play the game for you.
Yeah.
Right, so first of all, let me just say, I don't have a problem or a disagreement with anything Tim Dillon and Rogan said about Bill Clinton. I do think Clinton is a creep who should be in jail for all the disgraceful things he's been involved in, including his connections with Epstein. And honestly, I don't think you could find a single Democrat who would defend Bill Clinton. I think most Democrats agree that he had ties to Epstein and was most likely a predator who should be in jail for his crimes. What I do have a problem with is the fact that Tim Dillon and Rogan can say all the right things and take the right stance when it comes to Bill Clinton, but when it comes to Trump, that suddenly becomes a touchy subject they won't mention whatsoever, not even mentioning Trump's name in the same breath as Epstein. and that's despite of all the evidence, like Trump being named as a co-defendant with Epstein in a 2016 lawsuit alleging the SA of a minor in 1994, or the fact that Epstein visited Trump's Mar-a-Lago multiple times, or the fact that Virginia Jeffrey was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell while working at Mar-a-Lago. I could keep on going, but honestly, I'd have to make this video 3 hours long to cover all the evidence connecting Trump to Epstein. But yet, these guys want to sit there and talk about Bill Clinton. We already established a long time ago that Bill Clinton is a creep who should be in prison. Now let's move on to the next creep and see what he's got hidden in the closet. But this is their strategy, and maybe it's what they've been told by the higher-ups in the White House, to try to take the heat off of Trump and his connections with Epstein by focusing almost entirely on everyone else's connections with Epstein, while never mentioning or acknowledging the fact that Trump also had connections with him. Also, let me point this out, Bill Clinton is never going to be arrested while Trump is president. How do I know that? Well, both of these guys were part of the same social scene, meaning Epstein had them both as clients. Bill Clinton has plenty of dirt on Donald Trump and most likely knows a lot about the disgusting things Trump has done. So obviously Trump can't risk putting Clinton behind bars, because if that ever happened, Clinton would rat him out, and that's a risk Trump simply cannot take. So yeah, it's pretty annoying that Rogan and Tim Dillon can say all the correct things about Bill Clinton, but when it comes to Trump, they don't even dare to mention his name or his ties to Epstein. And I'm not gonna lie, that makes them look pretty horrible, considering that what they're doing is basically defending a predator simply because they endorsed him and voted for him. I mean, could you go any lower than that? It's genuinely disappointing what these guys have become. And what's even more annoying is how hypocritical they are, to the point where you'd have to be brainless not to see the hypocrisy they're engaging in. Now let's move on, because they keep on going with, of course, more of this bullshit that you can see right through, especially if you're even somewhat aware of what's going on.
I think it's going to come out. I think it's going to come out that he was a, not only obviously well known that he was a notorious evil guy, but also that he was working for Israel. I mean, I think this is going to come out.
And so
this is what I've been... what I think, but I also believe is somewhat well known and not a huge secret.
Isn't it? It's the whole thing is very strange that you have a pedophile,
yeah,
who's also connected to all these insanely wealthy and powerful people,
yeah,
and then does something where he gets all these people together for parties,
yeah,
and then supposedly has all of this information,
yeah,
and all this, and then you have Pam Bondi saying there's thousands of hours,
that's right,
of film,
yeah,
but then you have Kash Patel,
yeah,
saying no, there's nothing, there's nothing, and he killed himself.
Oh my god, I swear to god I'm gonna lose it. The person giving Kash Patel and Pam Bondi their orders is Trump. This whole idea that they act independently without any interference from him is one of the most disingenuous things I've ever heard. It's painfully obvious that Trump directs them to do whatever it takes to cover his ass. But once again, Rogan suddenly seems to forget that Trump is the president, the one calling the shots, the one telling Patel and Bondi exactly what to do. And honestly, Rogan's podcast has gotten to a point where it doesn't even feel like he's trying anymore. He just goes along with whatever narrative has been fed. Before, he used to at least pretend to play both sides. He would always say things like, oh, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, I'm just a guy observing what's happening in the political scene. But that has never really been the case, and right now it couldn't be more obvious.
We are absolutely 100% going to find some very uncomfortable things out about his relationship with Israel. I mean, this is not going to be a piece of paper that says, hey, I'm working, but there's going to be enough circumstantial evidence that's going to connect him not only to our own government, which I imagine that the CIA was involved as well, but I think it's going to connect him to, I mean, this was such a goof.
These are their files that they're holding up for everybody. The guy with the cowboy hat's got to go. Who's that guy?
I don't know, but I think this
is ridiculous, sir.
These are old files too, and they did this.
That fucking cowboy hat's ridiculous. Just holding up the thing with it, wearing a cowboy hat. We're here for American justice. The Epstein files, phase 1.
Now, to give you some context to that particular clip, the so-called Epstein files Phase 1 was nothing more than a cheap stunt by the Trump regime. Their brilliant idea was to release the Epstein files, except the only documents they provided were those already publicly available. Nothing new, nothing revealing. And yet, they packaged it as if they were unveiling something groundbreaking. This was basically an insult to the public's intelligence, essentially saying you're too stupid to notice, so here's what you already had access to and that should be enough to keep you quiet. But of course, Rogan and Tim Dillon mentioned none of that.
There's more. Listen, there's a reason that none of this has come to light, and there's a reason that they're dragging their feet on releasing this.
Yeah, because the amount of people that are powerful.
There are so many people ensnared by this, but also the other thing is, like, I think it is going to be an uncomfortable, and more than uncomfortable perhaps, with if it comes out that our ally, very close ally of America, was having this happen. Not obviously, it's not the Israeli people, it's not even the Israeli government per se, but it's a group in whatever you want to call it, the Israeli deep state or their intelligence community, that was using Jeffrey Epstein as an access agent to get access to people and leverage on people.
Oh my god, this is so disingenuous and slimy from Tim Dillon, trying to make it seem like the biggest discovery from the Epstein files is whether Epstein was working for the Israeli government. We already know Epstein was Mossad. That's not even close to being the biggest revelation from those files. The real discovery would be exposing all the disgusting people involved, including the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who took part in those vile acts. That's what we want to know, not whether Epstein was Mossad. We already know that. But this is the mental gymnastics these guys are pulling. They make it seem like Trump being in the Epstein files isn't a big deal, while Epstein being Mossad is somehow the most important thing. Once again, just a slimy way to paint the picture.
That he was a pedophile to begin with, and they
Yes.
go, this is our guy because he's fucked up.
Absolutely.
And then they have him run things. But how do you get a pedophile that can keep his shit together?
You find one that's good.
Well, he
at-
couldn't, obviously.
He
He got
couldn't
arrested.
keep his shit together, but, the 90s were a different time. There's no camera phones.
That's true.
There's no internet.
That's true.
You can intimidate reporters. You
Right.
can intimidate DAs.
Right.
You
Or you
know?
can just whack
This is
people.
a Vice article from 2017 about the DC Madam I found earlier, and I thought this was interesting. They tried to bring the info out later after she had died already.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and her attorney said the records could impact the presidential election.
What?
What?
The Supreme Court denied the applications. And
Wait a
then
minute.
Wait a minute.
They tried to FOIA the FBI, IRS, and the Postal Inspection Service since they were involved too, because it was a mail thing. She was in Northern California, and they barely sent any info.
And so this was in 2000 what?
17.
Wow.
I think that's when the
So
article was.
there's no presidential election.
Supposedly
2016
Jeffrey
it was.
Epstein said
2016.
to his
Oh, right.
brother or to someone, if people knew what I knew, both candidates in the presidential election would have to step down. That's a quote. Jamie can find that.
Now, that last bit right there tells me that Tim Dillon knows quite a lot about this Epstein situation, because unless you follow these things closely, there's no way you would know that particular quote from Epstein. So obviously, Tim Dillon is very knowledgeable and most likely knows all the connections between Trump and Epstein, but because he had dinner with someone from the Trump administration, most likely J.D. Vance, and has basically been bought by them, he has to keep his mouth shut and go along with whatever bullshit narrative they're trying to push. So yeah, that's pretty much it, but I'm telling you, man, watching this podcast was like being tortured for almost 3 hours, because the amount of lies and deception these two engage in was genuinely mind-boggling to me. Also, if you want to watch more exclusive content, you can do that on Patreon. That's also a great way to support the channel. I just posted a video about Joe Rogan having the biggest boomer moment. It's also from this podcast with Tim Dillon, and it's genuinely amazing how Joe Rogan, the guy who literally makes a living from being online, still falls for the most basic shit imaginable. Thank God for Jamie, because without him, I'm telling you, this podcast would literally be Joe Rogan looking like a dumbass constantly. But yeah, you can watch that video on Patreon, and that's it from me. See you in the next video.